September 16th meeting of the Design and Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Everyone for joining us this evening. Mike told me I'll be in charge of this meeting this evening. Take care of an undesignated piece of business that's been hanging out for a couple of years, and I would like to present Bill Bardenlotter with recognition from 2021 that he wound up never receiving. Bill, thank you so much.
Can you tell us what the recognition was for?
For his service on the board.
That would be the
Planning
county
committee.
planning commission.
Yes.
Metropolitan.
Metro Planning Commission prior to this change on.
And it was signed by all the responsible parties from chairmans. The guess first item of business would be the review of the minutes from the last meeting. Do you have any amendments or changes to that or a motion?
I just noticed as I was reviewing the packet that there's an omission. At the last meeting, Mr. Trask presented 3 photographs that referred to in the minutes. They're supposed to be attached to the minutes. For some reason, they're not there. I did email about it earlier today to Ms. Fischetti, but she might have been gone by the time I sent the email. So if we could add those photographs, I don't know if we can approve with the caveat that the photos be added. Otherwise, I think they're okay.
Yeah, I believe we could do that. Any other
Unless there's more comments.
comments? I'll take a motion for that
Move to approve.
based on adding.
Oh, with the caveat that the photos need to be subsequently added. And I'm talking about the 3 photographs that Mr. Trask presented at the previous meeting.
And staff should have those, and if for some reason they do not, then I can provide them again. So I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And passes. Are there any questions related to military operations? Anybody online?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question real quick?
Yes,
Why is that always on the agenda?
we are in a community that revolves to a certain extent around military operations, and anything that has to do with military operations directly affects the community. So we always ask that question. At different times, there have been a lot of activities that have affected the community. So questions are always asked. Is that okay?
No, it's fine. I was just curious.
So we'll move on to old business. What I'd like to do, it's been suggested that we move the annexation before the development code changes. If anybody would like to make a recommendation for that.
Also move.
I'll second.
Moved in second, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That passes. So we'll first hear 1140 Rebo Road. Staff, would you like to make a presentation on that?
Okay, if you remember, you've heard this for a number of months now, so it should be a pretty familiar project to everyone here, but everybody sees that on their screen and I'll try to. Okay, so this is the site plan approval. So it started as a self-storage facility. And it's become a mixed-use building because of the requirements of the code. But you see the parcel number, it's 1140 Rebo Road. It's owned in the T5 UC district, which is kind of our highest density urban district. It allows up to 5 stories max, and really almost no setbacks, and setbacks that really want buildings up against the street. Mixed-use buildings are strongly encouraged in this district. And you can kind of see some of the images here, but they're seeking to redevelop this into a mixed-use facility that has a commercial office space and also at least 3 dwelling units. So a dwelling unit for the office manager and 2 dwelling units on the top of the facility. And this is located at the basically the old bowling alley on Rebo Road. So this is the plan before you today, is to revitalize the old bowling alley into a commercial mixed-use building that has both self-storage, commercial office, and living dwelling units for rent or on the same property, and a future use area. So this is the site plan, the overall site plan that you can see here. So again, just picture that old bowling alley. What you asked for at the last meeting, and I'll actually just go to that. The last meeting, this was tabled on August 19th, and also was at the July 15th meeting tabled for more information. The applicant was asked to bring back plans at the August 19th meeting to depict the following. That was the future building plan with parking, landscaping to include what was called a grass area at the time, which is now existing parking, and a color-coded mixed-use plan with parking area for the subdivision of the deed restricted parking area. So that was what was asked for at the August meeting. At the July presentation, I figured I might as well add this. There was a lot of changes that from July to August. I'm just trying to remind everybody. There was a need to add a liner building, which was essentially the commercial office of at least 25 to 30 feet along the 2 road frontages. It was also that the liner buildings had to comply with the build out and with basically window and transparency requirements. Also, there was some discussion about that parking area, and there was some design changes with both entrances and shutters and final building materials that also occurred from July. So those are kind of some of the changes. And so what you asked for again were the landscape plan, the future use plan, and kind of an exhibit that kind of showed what's going on here. And so this is the overall site plan. Again, you're approving everything. You're approving the site plan. You're approving really all of this tonight. And so you can see the overall site plan. You've got the old bowling alley. You can see the access plan and the parking. I'll just go to the next slide because I think it shows it a little better. So as you requested, they've kind of highlighted where the commercial office space, where the subdivided parking parcel, and where the residential will be. So the residential is in blue on your screen. The office is in red or pink. I guess pink is probably a better description. And the parking area, which again is the deed restricted parking area from the property when they purchased it, is in green. So you can see should this get approved, what they would do is basically subdivide out the green parcel and have that for parking. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody. The red or the pink becomes that liner building area that is required as per the code that we'll get into in later slide. And then the residential adds the mixed use element as mostly the second story of the structure. So if everybody has their bearings, so the future use, this also came up at the last meeting. And so T5UC requires essentially a 60% build out along the streets, which you can see, and there's future area that's not being used here, that the applicant is not desiring to, doesn't have a plan for right now, thus the liner buildings attached to the building commercial office space. So there was some question, what would that potentially look like in the future? And so they're showing you, maybe a long building along Rebo Road with parking behind it. That's just essentially a possibility. But I think it's probably safe to say if they were to do something in the future, that something like that would have to be done per code. So you can see it on your screen. There's also questions about landscaping to remove that grass or to kind of delineate that grass area. So you can see all the trees that are being proposed to be planted really on Firehouse Lane. And then they've got basically landscaping all the way down to kind of screen that area. And then they're planting some live oak trees here on the southern end, and that's kind of the grass area, and then basically the wax myrtles surrounding the side from Rebo Road. Again, there may be some future use for that southern site later, later commercial uses that would obviously, so I think why they're proposing the wax myrtles on that lower end, because they can be easily removed. Architecture, you can see some renderings here. You can see on the second story kind of apartments, if you will. And this is kind of some rendering. So it becomes a mixed use center in order to create the storage, which is the existing bowling alley. So this is all kind of being added to the bowling alley, an extra story, all that extra area. And why is that the case? So the code under 3.8.2A.2C, that's a mouthful. It's not a federal code. It's pretty amazing. T5UC, if you get really into this, self-storage is only allowed. I think you have to go under this light industrial services, but it actually is allowed in T5UC, that urban district, only if it's set back a minimum of 300 feet from the public right of way with the following exception. So it either has to be 300 feet, or you have exceptions that are required if you're not going to do the 300 feet. So the bowling alley is not 300 feet back from Rebo Road, or from the right of way of Rebo Road, is that you make it multi-story. So again, 2 or more habitable floors. So you can see that they've added those residential apartments above the bowling alley to meet this section of the code. And then the liner building, which is Roman numeral 2. So if a liner building exists between the story and the right of way. And so what's even more interesting when you get into the code, liner buildings are defined, as you see on the screen, as either attached or detached. I think I will say in the July meeting, I think the staff, and I know this had a changeover, but I think we all, including the city architect, kind of felt like, I think we were thinking of the liner building more of a detached structure at the time, but it does say attached structure of 25 to 30 feet on number A. Is what classifies as a liner building or a detached structure, essentially in front of, one of these larger buildings. So the idea is to create kind of that urban streetscape on major streets, especially in T5UC. Liner buildings are the means to do so. And our code is allowed an exception to do storage if you have a liner building or you do a multi-story structure. However, so that's kind of was the July discussion. However, if you go even further, you'll see that this actually qualifies as a large footprint building, actually, and per the code, which is section 4, and the reference, I think it's 4.5.1, 4.5.10, and that was 4.5.9, the previous section that we were talking about. anything over 20,000 square feet actually requires, a liner building. So as you can see, number 2B, special requirements, liner buildings section are required in T4 and T5 districts between the large footprint building and the primary street frontage. So we have an exception for the self-storage use that can be cured by essentially doing a multi-story building, or it's 300 feet back, or you have liner buildings. In this case, they provided the 2-story, and it seemed like they might be exempt from the liner building, but because it was over 20,000 square feet, and that triggers the liner building. So essentially, they're not 300 feet back, but they do require the liner building and the multi-story structure. So hopefully that's not too complicated. It hopefully makes sense from the last 2 meetings. And so what they've done is what you see is they have provided the attached liner building, which you can kind of see on these images. So they have quite a bit of commercial office space along the Firehouse Lane and some along Rebo Road. So maybe this original along those pink areas, and then the blue areas, the 2nd story and some of the 1st story are actually residences instead of self-storage. So essentially the entire facade and both 2nd and 1st floor of this mixed-use center is residential or commercial. It is not a self-storage building. And so that's really the intent of the code, is to, I think it's allowing self-storage if it meets with the design and urban character of the environment. So I think that's what the applicant has provided. And at this point in the game, after we've gone through everything, we've reviewed the landscape, the final thing to really discuss was the parking lot. As per that large footprint building per the code, if you look at number 7 there on the screen and you look at the images, it says specific to T4 and T5, a minimum of 75% of all parking shall be located behind the primary building and or a liner building. And the majority of the parking in all other districts should be the same. In this case, the applicant does have a property that they bought that had a deed restriction on it. I think the reasonable solution for this is that they're going to basically subdivide out that green parking area that we showed. And that's going to serve as parking for this site, because there is no other use that they can really build on that site. And, we've essentially agreed to this. I think staff has agreed to the screening of that just because of these specific circumstances that were placed in the property for many decades, essentially before. They provided that documentation, so we verified that that is legal and correct. But, so essentially, if you are approving this tonight, they will go forward with subdividing out. Sorry, I'm skipping around. They will basically run a lot line down that green area, and we'll approve that after the meeting, essentially, if this gets approved. So that will no longer be part of the approval. However, there'll have to be a parking agreement between this site and the commercial mixed-use center that basically grants the parking to the commercial center in perpetuity, right? And so that is something that isn't necessarily, I think completely meeting the code, but subdividing it out, I think does meet the code, and this can be approved. With that, sorry, I have so many slides, but with that, we do recommend just a straight approval of the project, and that it meets all of the standards of the code. And I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. Any questions for Kurt?
Yes. This green parcel that's going to be subdivided out, will it then have a different tax ID number? Will it be a completely separate?
Would be a completely separate parcel.
Okay. And does the number of office units that we have here in the residential units, and maybe I should know this, but does a code require a certain number of parking spaces to be provided for the number of offices in the residential space?
It does, it's 1 per 300.
1 per
Feet
300.
of office space, and they would, and basically with the, well, actually in T5, you see it only requires really 1 spot per unit. It kind of reduces it down, but this is, I think, meant to be a urban landscape where there's street parking, which is there
So-
is some along Firehouse Lane,
So
so.
they can meet that parking requirement even
Meet
though
the
they're
parking.
relying on a completely separate parcel that's not part of the parcel that's. the
Yes,
sub-
so our code in the parking section of, I think it's 5.6 offhand, the development code allows, one, it has a reduced parking requirement for T5 UC for really all uses. And that's
Mhm.
again, because it's supposed to be urban. And two, it allows shared parking and on or off-street, street parking to be counted for the required parking spaces. And so really the only thing that's required, so all the on-street parking spaces, so the Firehouse Lane
Mhm.
parking spaces can automatically be counted if they're within 400 feet. But any other parking that's within 400 feet, you need that parking agreement. So if they subdivide this out, we would just have to have an easement or some kind of agreement that's notarized that basically in perpetuity grants them that shared parking agreement to this property.
So will two different entities or parties own the subdivided part and then the part that's the subject of the?
I mean, they could, but we wouldn't be able to issue any permits until they provide that shared parking document that's.
So let me ask the question slightly different. Does the same party own both the part that's going to be divided out?
Right now they do, yes. And you can ask them too, but right now. they
Because
do.
because it sounds like you're essentially be entering into an agreement with yourself.
Yeah, you'd be entering, and that's something I think maybe their attorneys can work out or.
That's the way it's
That's
always
not-
done, though, when I mean, that's standard. You can have a shared parking agreement between yourselves because it's the issue of the parcels. That's what matters. It doesn't make any difference if the same person
So
owns them.
the same, so on that agreement, you'd have,
So it's presumably what it does, the purpose of it is that it's gonna run with the land, so
It'll
that
run
if
with the
the-
land.
if there's a transfer that this parcel provides the parking for the other parcel. So they can't go ahead and utilize that parcel for something else if the main parcel doesn't have sufficient parking to meet the code requirements.
so the agreement would actually be, the same entity would be on both sides of the agreement?
Yeah, but it would be to
Fascinating.
their future assigns, right, and whatever,
But-
whoever.
Can I ask a question about that though? Just on that deed restriction, who does that restriction run in favor of? Who can enforce it? And how long does it run?
It should run in perpetuity. And
I just,
it would run, I guess,
who, who does it run in favor of? I mean, who has the right to enforce that
well, the,
issue that you raised? I mean,
who has the right to, I mean, like,
there must be another parcel owner somewhere that has the right to enforce that restriction such that it can't be amended or eliminated. I mean, you
that's-
said you saw the restriction that has created this dilemma, so I'm just saying is there's a dilemma because somebody has the right to enforce that restriction, and who is that?
well, I guess in the end, the city would.
Well, I don't know. It should- would say on
Also
the face of the,
also, I guess, the parent track that's needing the parking would be the one that,
no, the
because.
reason that this was raised is because there's a deed restriction that was set on that property.
That's right.
And that means that someone has the right to enforce that
Oh, the deed
restriction, which is
restriction. I'm
what
sorry, I
has
thought you were
caused
talking
this.
about parking.
No,
I
the
would-
deed restriction I'm talking
I
about.
would defer to the applicant on that.
Yeah, we can
We
ask.
do
them
have
that.
a copy.
I'm
of
just
the
curious
deed
because
restriction,
it's,
but, it is pretty clear.
Mhm.
It is pretty clear, so I'll let them.
no, I just didn't see it. That's why I'm asking
I can come back for any other questions.
or provide us.
Any other questions? I just had one, Kurt. Just as a clarification, as far as you know, the depiction of the blue on what you're showing us right now. No, go back to where you were. The depiction of all that blue is supposed to be sod. I see,
Oh, you're
I
talking
see a
about the
note.
green there, or the.
Yeah, I see a
bluish
note
green,
there.
The bluish green.
and I'm assuming then that the concrete would be removed and they would be preparing that, and it says 8 inches of soil on top.
That's what they're depicting on the plan, and if this is what you approve, this is what they'd have to build. But again, I think that's a valid question to ask the applicant to, but that's the plan. So if they don't
I don't
provide it, then they have issues, so.
Okay. Another question I had,
And I think everybody realizes that that's all just, you know, a 1950s era parking lot, so.
right,
Okay.
right. Um, I guess I wanted to, take a look at the, future use exhibit.
Wrong one.
Pretty much shows all landscaping and everything removed, with parking in front of that building and then another building or two in front of that. And I know that's just, future potential things that might go there. I would just like to make it clear that we're not approving.
You're not approving
Use,
that.
so-
I think there was just a desire from this, a recommendation from this
Yes,
board at the
we-
last meeting. What could it
correct.
look like? And I mean, you know, what the code would want is a building that's at least 60% of that frontage along Rebo Road. And that's, you know, that's what they're providing there. That's what it would look like. And so, that's what you're seeing. And the code T5UC allows 100% build out. Of course, you still have to meet the stormwater requirement, the local requirements. You know, there's ways to do that, but, it does allow full build out. So right now.
I have a question too about the landscape plan. There is a difference between this plan and the last one we saw, which was drawing as L-1.1. Basically, a difference is on the earlier one, the tree line continued all the way along Rebo Road. Here, they stop it just to the south of the drive and then kind of turn it toward the west. Is there no requirement that there be some trees or something along Rebo Road, like all the way down Rebo Road? I mean, this looks like the grass is just going to go right to the road, and it's a pretty large area that's got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you could require as a condition of the applicant, but I think as you're aware with the Reimagine Rebo, is Rebo has very limited right of way. And so, the road is pretty, you know, there's not a lot of room for a tree lawn per se. And I think they're probably, again, something you need to ask of the applicant is they're probably trying not to restrict themselves for future development, because then they're just going to cut those trees down, because, the form-based code requires a 0 to 15-foot setback up against that line, which is, again, without the right of way being very deep, is very close to the road. And so, you know, I think that's a decision you'd have to make, because if there is going to be future development, or you're going to put trees there, they may conflict with the future development, or they may have to be removed. And so that, I think that's a perfectly valid, you know, maybe there will never be future development. So if you want to add that condition, I think could be a, you know, a good idea, you know, maybe a tree every 30 to 40 feet. There, it just to warn you that, you know, that could conflict with the future building there. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. So,
You know, in that regard, if you notice on the south side of the property, they are putting in 6 live oaks, which I'm not sure that addresses what you were talking about, but I just find it interesting. All the way on the other side of that big empty space, they're putting in 6 live oaks.
Yeah.
I mean, surely with 15-foot setback would be more than enough room to plant some nice street trees that would, I think, dress up the corridor. So, you know, I think they've just elected not to because of their future plans. But I think if you want to make that condition, I think you could still design a building that with that 15-foot to even put a, you know.
Well, you know, their future building plans may call for something that would rearrange that landscaping. I
Good.
mean, it's presently, you know, a clean, open lot, which I think is the reason the distinction was made. So this landscaping has been redesigned apparently to shield the Rebo Station facility itself. This balance of this open space, I would be hesitant about requiring a particular landscape plan that might have to be shifted depending on what the future use might be.
I think
They're
that's a
gonna have to
question-
build
that's
it.
a
They're gonna
question
have
for the
to-
applicant.
I
I'll
think
have
that's,
them-
yeah, we can get into that with the applicant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Sure.
appreciate it. We'll ask the applicant to come forward and make his presentation.
Just need- I think we all know who you. But, if you want to move this, it goes like that.
Okay, go to the, go back to that landscape plan, it's your question about it.
And you just move the arrow either
Okay.
left or right and it'll go back because
Which way-
it's
which way?
it's a PowerPoint level.
And please state your name and address for the record.
RSBURRS. To answer your question on the landscape plan, presently there's about 8, laurel oaks and 1 pine from 18 to 24 inches that do line Rebo Road. And they're set back about 20 feet off the sidewalk at this time. So when we cleaned up the vacant lot there, those were there, we left those and then planted the live oaks down that south property line. The engineers, when I presented to them to do a future use plan, they noticed on the code that it was a 0 setback on Rebo Road. And that's the way they drew that, proposed plan. Not that that's the way it would be built, but just to, show that if we did it there, then we'd have to have so many parking spots to balance the building. So they put the footprint that was capable of having parking on that future use plan.
I understand. I just want to make sure that when if the board decides to approve this plan, that we approve the plan, but we do not include in that the future use
Not expected,
development sheets.
not expected, just it's one concept that could be done.
And just one other question, and it may just be the drawing, but it looks like there's a walkway between the proposed building and the parking area in the northeast corner. Is that just a walkway, like a flat walkway with stripes, or is this some kind of bridge or something?
That, the handicap parking is on the north side of that driveway, that ingress egress. And that is the handicap striping to indicate the crossing for the handicap, from the
Okay.
handicap space to the office space.
Another comment I would make is all these areas that you showed that are going to be sodded and grassed. I would like to make sure that when we condition this, that it also includes a landscape architect and landscaper that will dictate what the depth needs to be of the soil based on what they find underneath the concrete once it's all torn up, and that it's an appropriate level of dirt and sod with irrigation. I would prefer to see the trees do what you did before, continue on down, because you'll still be looking at just open area there. And, for future development, it'll be easy to move landscaping around if you need to.
It could be either way, but you know that the committee prefers. The engineers, I mentioned that there was concerns about the exposed parking area. They felt like that the modification was better screening for the parking area than it was to run Rebo, since Rebo already had the 12 to 14 substantial laurel oaks and pines running along the sidewalk. No, it's not a screen, but it is landscape. And they clear the power line, so they don't have to be sliced up the trunk to make the power lines efficient, safe. If you'll note, the area that's going to be grassed, that's in the existing parking lot, is the footprint of the proposed future building. So the footprint of that building will have to have soil compaction such that we can build a building on it. So the plan would be to put adequate topsoil with an irrigation system to make sure the grass can grow, but not to remove all the compaction, even the crushed rock that's under the asphalt, not to remove it, because it's going to have to be put back again as soon as we start construction.
As long as it's approved by the landscape architect.
Okay.
That it's going to support whatever you're putting there.
We got you.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I did have that question about that deed restriction that Kurt referred to. Can you explain that, who imposed that restriction and who it was in favor of that
Restriction was
required it
done-
to remain as a parking lot?
restrictions done by the shopping center that's to the north of the site.
Uh-huh.
And it was done by the, I don't know, the LLC or corporation, but it was done to provide a view easement for that shopping center so that it wouldn't, that if anybody bought the lot, they couldn't build. Then the firehouse bought the lot.
Right.
But their deed restriction had expired. This one didn't have an expiration on it.
So it doesn't really serve a purpose anymore.
It does.
And so who can enforce that deed restriction?
I guess the heirs of the shopping center that developed it.
But you said it's a fire station now.
No, sir, the fire station is in the same view easement.
Oh, it's
The easement from the shopping center where the Glidden Paint Store, I believe, is,
The fire station's in the same,
view.
view
line.
easement. How did it, but it doesn't
The
violate,
easement expired, I believe, in 99.
and this one doesn't expire?
It didn't expire. The easement that came up, the discussion about, we will place an easement under the direction of the city, on that, subdivided parcel in favor of the owner of the residual parcel, that allows for, maintenance, and construction of ingress, egress, parking,
Right.
stormwater. So that's in favor of the grantor, which is the owner of the bowling alley.
Does the view shed easements serve a purpose anymore? So did you ever ask the owner of the shopping center if he would release it?
We talked to our attorneys about whether we should release it or not, and they said that we're gonna need it for either parking or detention, that it wasn't worth the trouble to go through it, try to.
But you're not using it for detention, you're just using it for, you're not using it for detention purposes,
But we can,
but you don't need it for that.
not now. No, we do not.
And how many parking spots and Kurt, you may have told us, but remind me, how many actual parking spots will that lot serve, required parking? Because for a storage facility, storage doesn't require much parking
Very
at
little.
all. So it's really it looks to me like it's bigger than is needed to satisfy the parking needs of the main parcel.
I'm pulling a number out of memory. I think it's 35 spaces, but it's for the offices, not for the
Oh,
residences. The residents need parking, the offices need parking, and the storage only needs 4 or 5.
yeah, so there's, okay.
So it's basically a minimum. I think there might be a plus 1 or 2. But it's not just the parking lot. There's the parking in front of the building, along the landscaping there. That's, I think there's 5 spots there. But the parking is not excess but it does meet the minimum.
So if there is this view shed easement on that property, then it really is never gonna end up, you're testifying it's never really gonna be used for anything other than just green space or excess. overflow.
Parking, green space or detention, something that doesn't interfere with that view. That's not there
But
anymore.
no building will end up being there.
No building. And we planned that from the very beginning, as soon as we found out about it.
So from that standpoint, landscaping becomes kind of, perimeter landscaping along Rebo becomes more important because, just to screen the parking. Because there's never gonna be anything else there.
And you note there's a live oaks being added in there to the parking area. to-
I we don't have any pictures of
Okay,
what it
I'm
looks
sorry,
like
it's on the
today, do
screen.
we? Kurt,
right here.
Oh, wait, let me just see there. Is that of the parking there?
So this is what it looked like
Yeah.
before they started working on it. All of these trees have been cleared. Then if you go down the street,
Yeah, there are.
this is I'm assuming this is the shopping center that
No,
was.
that's the wrong way.
It's the other way, toward the,
North.
and we're going we're talking about that green area between next to the fire station.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so
Here, if you don't mind, I'll
that's
just,
a little area there, isn't it?
No, it's actually the area right there where it's paved.
Oh, so that's where it's gonna
That's the
take it
area.
out.
That's
Okay, let's
right.
Look at right in front of.
That's the subject area of the view easement right
Yeah,
there.
so let's just look and see what's there in terms of trees.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let's see what's-
Let's do,
It's hard to go there right now.
no, I just need to turn around. Hold on, just bear with me.
We'll put it up on the screen. Was it 13? Is it 11:40?
Here's the,
It's 11
this is
here.
the, this is the
11.
easement right here.
Yeah.
Correct. There's this thing right here.
I thought,
and if you
once
go-
I'm typing it in, then I'm.
you'll
There's,
see, there's nothing there right now.
it doesn't look like there's anything there to speak of.
No,
No.
no.
There's a bush there. There's no trees there.
And there's a
Are
bush.
we
beside-
wrong about that?
This part of it, I think is still pretty accurate.
So as to not get too far into the trees or the
Well,
weeds, if you will.
but we're on that. Just see if you, let's make sure that we're talking about same thing.
So I think we're talking about this corner.
Yeah,
That's right. And along Rebo Road,
Let's see if I
there
can
isn't any
see.
landscape there. There's
No.
a sign and some old shrubs there
Yeah, so that's where the screening will be planted.
on Rebo.
So you're right, to the extent that that stays parking in perpetuity, it should be screened. with
Where,
landscape.
yes.
where we've got a cursor, they're planting the 2 live oak trees. And then the rest of the screening will be just surrounding that. And then,
This is wax myrtles.
and then they also have the trees that are down the side here, that
But
some of them are already there, so.
we're not actually approving a landscaping plan. We're approving a concept.
That's
A
true.
landscaping plan is going to be submitted and have to be.
Well, the only way that it will be is if it's part of the condition,
Well,
Mr.
yeah.
Chair, yeah, of any approval
Yeah.
we give.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why I said, well, in my opinion, we ought to continue what was shown to us last time was, all the way down Rebo and then turn the corner.
We got that on the plan.
And so we might as well just look at the, future areas since it's come up a lot. You see all the,
And that tree line is where he's
Mhm.
proposing to put the wax myrtle, straight down that tree line right there.
so we just
That point. to the
stop all of the, yeah. So I think you can see what that looks like. And I know you've done some trimming as per Dominion.
Cleared now.
It's
So
cleared. It's
cleared.
flat.
We cleared all the briars and the debris off the lot.
No, it's, all the trees are gone. It's,
No, so all these trees are still there.
Yeah, I didn't
trees
think
are still
those,
there?
Yes, sir.
they were trimmed.
The trees that were removed are perpendicular to that sign toward the bone house. The trees along Rebo, none of those were removed. They're all still there. That's what I mentioned earlier.
So those power lines that we see, well, we saw a minute ago, in the area of those trees
Is that helpful?
that run perpendicular to Rebo, what are those serving? Not the lines that we're looking at on this, view, but I could see power lines going perpendicular to the one.
They serve, security lights across and they drape across the parking lot. They're being removed.
Okay, they're not serving anything behind you or anything, so they're all gonna go.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll give you time for rebuttal if you want. Go ahead and open it up to the public for, any questions, concerns, comments. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section. Any last comments from the applicant?
We have 2 options for the landscape with the screening shrubbery. One has the line that runs 90 degrees to Rebo to connect to asphalt. The other runs down the front of the property, as you suggested. So if we want to approve it, we can condition the sheet that has the landscape on it that runs all the way down Rebo Road.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it back over to the board for any discussion and or motions.
May I ask an additional question of staff? The staff report included in our packets, I did notice one discrepancy and I did ask about it earlier, but I just want to be clear because the staff report that we have here in the findings of fact section is indicating some areas where the plan does not comply with the code and situations where it says it complies, but we need additional conditions. Yet the staff recommendation is basically unconditional approval. So I want to clarify, am I reading that properly? Is that what staff is?
I
recommending?
think that was, my fault or mistake from the last meeting when there were still some issues. And so that little table, I didn't update.
So is staff recommending unconditional approval?
Yes, because of, as was presented to you and it's in the report. So I apologize, I didn't update that from no to yes, that they made all of those changes in the last few months that are also noticed in the report and that we went over today in the earlier part. So, yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Before we get into the motions, I just want to clarify two things that we talked about to be in a motion. One is that the approval does not approve the future use exhibit shown in the documents. And we also were asking for the modification of the landscape. And so I'm open for any discussion and or motions.
I don't have anything to discuss.
Do we need any advice on the parking agreement itself? I mean, we got two of you are lawyers. I mean, is that something that staff can approve if drafted up? Okay.
Actually, 3 of us are lawyers.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
I am still open for a motion.
So I guess I'll make a motion that the planning commission approve this application subject to the landscaping being modified so that the line of landscaping goes all the way down parallel to Rebar Road along that undeveloped side property.
Would you like to exclude the future use exhibit?
I'd like to further modify my motion to add a clarification that this approval does not approve any specific development on that empty portion directly
Any
south.
future- just any future use.
Any future use.
And did you want to add anything about subject to appropriate subdivision and a parking agreement?
Yes.
I'd like to further amend my motion to say that the approval here is contingent upon the agreement that Ms. McFadden just mentioned being executed and approved by staff.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. And that's,
Sorry, it's right.
it's unanimous.
Right hand.
It's unanimous. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your patience with us through the process.
Good looking building.
Next, we're going to move on to the annexation. If staff would like to present, I would appreciate it.
So I have this up. I might as well just type it in for you.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
See what it looks like.
No, like the old bowling alley, actually. Bowling alleys generally were not.
All right. Might as well just start with this since it's about as good as I'm gonna get. Well, anyway, so this is a annexation, a two-part request for annexation and rezoning. And so both can be basically heard together, but you would need two separate motions. And as an annexation, it is a voluntary request, right? You can choose to accept or deny. There's not specific standards other than the statutory standards that have to be met to annex the property. And so what are those standards? And just turn that off. So I think everybody just gets a little picture of what that looked like and what their application on. All right. And this basically is this contiguous to city property. That's essentially, and that there's a bunch of other things, but is it not subject to another annexation, those kind of things. Which staff feels like those have all been met currently. So we kind of just had a little glimpse there on Google Maps since it was up before, but you see the parcel number, so 40 County Shed Drive. It is currently, this is the plat that's on it, so it's right now, it's a bisected property, if you will. So County Shed Road kind of curves and goes through to the same parcel. So it's there's a parcel on the south and the parcel on the north. If you look at the plat here, it's bordered by the trail, but there's no access onto 21. So all the access of this property is along County Shed Road. So that's, I think, important. And right now it is in the C3 NMU district, which is in the county. So C3 NMU is quite an acronym there, but it's a neighborhood mixed use district that allows essentially, it allows a lot of uses, but it has an 80 unit total multifamily restriction, but it does allow 2.5 stories. It allows townhouses, single family, commercial. It allows some commercial. So it allows a wide range of uses on it. So you can see the aerial map. It's obviously pretty wooded right now. There's also another thing to note that's on the plat, as you can see, is there's a large easement, utility easement that's running through the property that you can kind of see better on that aerial map, where you can kind of see where there's lines going through there, and you can kind of see it here. There's also a little bit of a wetland on the property, as OCRM line from the wetlands that are adjacent to it that would have to be, there would have to be a setback from. That's on the property. So the city zoning, so this is kind of, the map doesn't look, a lot of white there. So white's all the county. The only things that are colored are in the city. So it's a little hard to see on this map or on the county zoning map, but this whole long, kind of strip that is the trail is actually a T1 district, and that's where this property really abuts that. But otherwise, you can kind of see it here. It's not really located. There is a hotel that's to the east of this that
Kurt,
I think
could you go back to the previous slide, please, and just use your cursor and sort of outline the subject property for us, please, on this map?
Yeah, it's hard to see, isn't it? Let's go back to, so you can see the shape. Whoa. So you can see the shape of the property, kind of a triangular shape that's bisected by the county Shed Road. And you can see where hopefully everybody can see where it ends there. Does everybody see that? And so when
Yes.
you look here, the red lines, it's kind of hard to make out, but they kind of stop before there's a property in between the hotels and this. Does that make sense? So it goes
Yeah,
across.
there's a big
the street.
power line easement.
Big
that
power
goes
line
right
easement, so
there.
I'm kind of putting my cursor to kind of show the
Yep,
outline.
okay, I got it.
So,
Got it.
so this property abuts the trail, but there would be a donut hole, next to the, hotel property. Is that what?
So this shows the county zoning. I think this maybe is a better representative. So all the yellow is C3 NMU, but it's also in the county. Why the trail showed up when the county zoning, I don't know. That's just an error in their mapping program, but the white is in the city. So you can see that there is a parcel in between, essentially, which is drainage and not really the hotel property either.
It's really a creek. It's really sort of a creek
Yeah.
down in
And
there.
so
almost.
so you can see it's basically adjoining, this lightly colored T1 district, which is really not showing up too well on the screen, I'll be honest. But what this big swath of property to the north that is along 21, that is the property that's owned in the city. It's zone T1, which is for open space. So that is what it's contiguous to and why it can be annexed. Otherwise, there is a parcel, and then there's another parcel, and then there's the hotel. Everything else that's in yellow is in the C3 and MU district. And as you see from the aerial, you can see the development that's occurred there. So most of it has been undeveloped right now. So,
Can you tell us what that county zoning allows today?
so it should be in your packet. It's a mixed use district. It allows.
Excuse me, that,
It's a mixed use
it is.
district. It allows a mixture of residential and commercial. I can't say I'm an expert. I did contact the county planning director. He informed me that this would have an 80-unit multifamily restriction on it. Or just multifamily.
wait, you said an 80,
If it was going to be developed in a multifamily fashion,
right?
it would have an 80-unit restriction.
You mean no more than, no more than 80 units?
More than 80 units. Otherwise, if it was platted out or townhouses, that restriction would not exist. So it's, hopefully that's all in your packet.
Yeah, let me find it there.
I mean, I'll be honest, it's an odd district. It's actually a conventional district for them. So it's a straight zoning district for the county. And I don't know that I can claim a lot of expertise, but I did contact the county about it. That's what they told me.
Well, the zoning that's being requested on, along with this annexation, how much different is that really than what they already have in the county?
Okay, so, sure, and so they're requesting a T4 district, which, again, all the details are in your packet, but what is
T4N,
the T4 district? It's essentially an urban transect district that allows,
Mixed uses, right?
mixed uses, but it also allows multifamily up to 4 stories, and it requires the buildings, somewhat similar to the T5 that we just saw. It requires the buildings to be in that 0 to 15-foot setback from the street. It requires at least 60% of the building to be up against, or development to be up against that setback line from any street. And so in this case, the County Shed Road would be, the main streets that would require that. So the buildings would have to be, you could have 3, 4-story buildings, 10 to 15, 0 to 15 feet back from that.
isn't that what those hotels are today?
The hotels are zoned T5, so we are actually RMX, they're zoned RMX. So RMX is it's zoned RMX T5. You see they chose RMX is like the conventional zone that allows hotels in it.
Yeah, but they're also similar. They're,
It's much different. It allows all commercial uses, whereas T4 really
I've-
doesn't allow all commercial uses.
I got that, but I'm saying you just said that the requested zoning district would allow up to 4 stories. That's already what you have on the adjoining property in the height of the hotels.
Well, it's a property that's 2 properties away in the city. So there's 2 properties in between this property and the hotels. So it's,
What's on those properties in between?
nothing.
Are they part of the same development plan as,
No,
are they have the same zoning though?
they do, I believe. Yeah, it's right here. Well, one is in the county still. And
Kirk, could
So
you?
there's a county property between, it would really have been helpful if, when these people file this stuff, if they'd give us
so here we go.
a map that actually has the property clearly outlined, and if they
Well,
would, and if they would delineate exactly what those adjoining uses are, so we don't have to go through this sort of weird examination process to find out what we're looking at.
Well, that's what I think I'm attempting to do with these. So you can see.
So I know, but
county zoning, so the white is essentially in the city. So you can see there's a county portion that's kind of irregularly shaped, following a stream essentially. That's directly east of it. Does that show on the screen to you pretty well?
Well, I can see now, I couldn't tell from my packet at home what property we
Yeah,
were
it's
looking at,
hard to-
and that's
yeah,
what
it's
I'm
hard
saying
to-
would have been useful. And I can't tell exactly looking at what you're showing us here, what's next to it. You said that there's a couple of hotels, which I'm
So-
familiar with. Well, I know it, but I can't tell looking at that.
So
It
there's,
should have been labeled so we could actually tell.
okay, so, it's really, I I don't think you're going to do much better online with
Can,
that, but
That's all right. Somebody,
um,
can
you
you,
go.
can you use your cursor and point at the lot that the hotel closest to the proposed development area is? That it? Okay.
so it's right here.
Okay, so what's on the little, what's next to the, what is on those two lots to the
To the left.
left?
Nothing.
Okay,
But they're zoned the same thing as that hotel property?
One of the lots is, but they have some restrictions on them, and one of the lots is not.
but they're both vacant right now.
They're vacant right now.
Are they, when you say restrictions, are they restrictions by virtue of the county or the city development code or by virtue of some kind of deed restriction on them? Plant restriction or something?
You know, I probably, right now, it appears they have like a stream and some utilities going through them.
It's a wetland. I mean, it's a
It has
pretty
no CRM
substantial
line.
wetland. This area,
Oh, so it's environmentally
it's-
constrained, not in terms of,
yes.
It would be very hard to develop them.
oh, well, that's, yeah, I thought you said restrictions. There's constraints. I got it. But so are they contiguous to the city by virtue?
Yeah, maybe I'm just not making myself clear. So
No, you're
it's
not.
contiguous to the city, and it's, I think, just maybe the maps are struggling. So you can see the trail.
Right.
It's going, the trail is zoned as per, as you can see, it's really hard to see on these maps, but maybe I'll just bring them up on,
That's
the
okay.
trail is zoned, T1. It's in the city.
Trail is-
So does that make sense?
What's directly across the street? Across 21.
See if I can just pull up the live map and stuff right here.
Yeah, what is that? Is that the car dealership?
The car dealership is down here. This is before you get to the car dealership. This is miscellaneous small businesses. From my memory.
All right,
That was-
here we go. We'll see if this makes it a little bit better. So look. Of course, all these pictures are from the site, so it's can zoom in though. That make a little more sense?
yeah, could you do the layer that just shows the actual tree line?
You mean the aerial map? It'll take me back out, so sorry, bear with me.
Well, never mind.
All right, I mean, it seems to be a pretty important thing, so. Has to load because
Mhm.
it's by resolution.
Just gonna show you that that area is unbuildable.
There's need a lot of joining it, you're saying.
Okay. Now it's gonna populate, so everybody just give it a second.
Zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, you can see right there on the property adjoining the hotel, you see it's a wetland. You can see part of the creek right there.
And it's not owned by the hotel, so. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Kind of see.
And so by being annexed into the city and allowed the zoning classification requested, the object is to permit high-density residential development, correct?
That's, you know, there's not a site plan or a plan that's been submitted with this request, so it's not required as per our code. And so what you're just looking at is, do you feel like T4 is suitable for this property? Is that, so maybe this zoning map is a little easier to see because it's live. Sorry. Bear with me. Thought I had it. It's still hard to see that T1 district, but it's this very light light gray. So you can kind of see the T1 there.
Mhm.
It even comes down, joining this property. And so that's what the property is, and it's the Spanish it's essentially the old Buford Jaspers, or the old railroad right away that Buford Jasper now. So the white is in the county. That light gray is the T1, which is the trail, the former railway. Is that better, Matt? Hopefully everybody sees this now.
No, that's,
And then you can
That's
see
fine.
where the T5 starts. So there is a little tiny parcel that they're basically using for drainage, but then, this is basically wetlands right here that's still in the county. And then there's just a little piece of this right away that for some reason came down, but it's just natural open space area. So T1 only allows natural open spaces. It doesn't allow any construction, any building.
Can you X that box there that's right over okay, so was that little piece of T1 headed toward County Shed Road, something that was a possible access for the trail? Is that, why is that like that?
I have no idea. I
Okay.
have no idea. It's probably the railway got it for some reason years ago.
There's a huge ditch along the border, I believe, that probably runs down the property line from the trail. Perhaps not. Maybe that's
You
level.
can see the.
There is that
line.
power line easement that runs through.
Okay.
See what it looks like. So that, hopefully and you can see the trail, you can see the power lines. So hopefully everybody's got a pretty good feel of where we're at here. See what's around it. Surrounding uses around it are basically as per the previous, although
Well, it's T5, UC across the street and where the hotels are?
that's RMX.
What did you say? It's RMX?
So there are 2 or 3 of the properties are in the city. The rest are in the county. So in the yellow or but there's no direct access onto 21. So does this make sense? So this is probably the best map to use, Mr. Bardenwerper.
So theoretically, going from the county zoning to the city zoning allows for a little higher density.
Yeah, it allows for higher density.
And could you explain E a little bit to us? Your comments.
Oh, well, let me kind of finish here with this presentation.
Okay.
Sorry, I guess we got a little, if it's okay, hopefully it's useful. Maybe not. So you can see now this is in our comp plan, but the future land use area for
Sorry.
the comp plan, this was not part of, about as far as I can zoom in. This was not part of the future. So 2021, when the comp plan was approved, the city approved it with future annexation areas and future land use proposed for those areas. So if you look at the map, the county shed, this area on County Shed Road was not included as a future land use for annexation area with the land use of either urban or industrial or institutional. And so that's a bit of a challenge since you don't have guidance from the comp plan to annex it yet. The statute allows this property to come with an annexation request. And so, that's, I think the concern from staff is that, as you saw from the pictures, that, this wasn't really considered for an urban area, and there's really not any urban infrastructure, lots or blocks to make a T4 district successful, I think, in staff's mind. So I think with the proposed zoning of T4, which requires those buildings to be up against the street, I think staff has some major concerns that haven't been alleviated with, that would have some concerns with what's being presented with T4.
I mean, isn't it correct that this parcel is really directly adjacent to either the urban center or general urban designation in the comp plan, is it not?
It is very close, but it is not in one of those areas. And so, again, it's your decision, right? I think just from a staff level opinion, I think there's just concerns if we're going to go to a transect-based district that requires an urban build pattern, that pattern doesn't exist anywhere around this. So, to design this, which you will be seeing moving forward, is going to be very challenging for that, form-based district. I think, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, maybe another district would maybe be more appropriate, or more a suburban district. Right now with the current conditions, since it's not basically up against 21 or accessing 21, there's quite a bit of a distance from it. I think that's just a staff level opinion, right?
Would be visible from, if there were to be a 4-story high-density development constructed on this site, it would be visible from 21, would it not?
It would likely be visible, yes. But it would not be fronting 21. There would be, the trail would be the buffer.
Let me just ask a question about, this is a procedural question. This annexation petition is based on multiple ownership. Well, it's based on 100% ownership, so this is why they can do it this way. But the petition itself indicates multiple ownership. EDP Holdings LLC and Ashley E. Dane. Other places, we refer to the Marjorie Griffin Family Trust. There's all kinds of different signatures. There's no address. This material that we've been provided appears facially insufficient to establish a petition for annexation on its face because of the ownership situation. I don't know if you have other material at the city that you have not provided to us, but it's very concerning to me that we would even see this under these circumstances.
I guess they signed I think the Ashley Dane and EDH Holdings are the applicants. They're proposing the annexation as probably to, I'll let the applicant decide on that, but from what I understand, they've provided the affidavit
I don't see any affidavit in this.
that, did that not go? We do have that. I can.
I thought it was there.
Maybe I missed it. I see.
And that's what we require
various
for any
signatures, but I don't see a
property.
notary.
That's what we require for, unfortunately, that's what we require. So, I think it's right after the application. They have date of signature, to the members of the city council petition for annexation, which is the Marjorie Griffin Family Trust. And so again, they've signed it and dated it. And then I believe the rest of the application, and that's what we required. The rest of the application is from, I think, a different proposed agent that probably is
Okay,
going to purchase the property after it's annexed, if it's annexed. Does that, I think that's the applicant, but I think that's that's something you have to direct at the applicant.
that does not seem very clear to me. Because the applicant is identified as EDP Holdings LLC.
Sure. Well, they're the agent for the
And-
petition is done by the Marjorie Griffin Family Trust. That's who signed that. And so the application, they're the agents for, I think, the Marjorie Griffin
Well-
Family Trust.
My concern is that if we were to approve this petition, that I think we should condition on clear evidence of ownership by the people who are, consenting to this petition, because otherwise there's other procedures that need to be done.
Well, I think I would disagree, Ms. McFadden, because they provided the petition that is in the name of the Marjorie Griffin Family Trust. They've signed it. If you would like them to notarize it, we could do that. That's something maybe we could add. I don't think that's ever been done. And
Well, have you looked, who is listed in the ownership on the tax rolls for this parcel?
well, that's something that it should come up right now in GIS, but I think the applicant is the EDH Ashley Dane. That's the applicant who's the agent for the request. That's who's taking it forward. So it's a different person. But we don't require, as long as the petition is signed by the owner, we don't require the owner to, the owner can have an agent, right? And so that's what the application is.
Mhm.
So is that the confusion? Because
Well, I'm,
Because it still says, Marjorie Griffin Family Trust and.
well, there's a lot of
Actually,
blanks on this paperwork.
And actually, since we're on this, I can just go straight to and so that's who owns this. So we're on the assessor site. And so that's who owns the property currently. That's what the assessor site states for.
Okay, well, that's good. And owner's signature, you know, a trust obviously is not a person, so a person signed this. Is this unreadable signature the trustee of that trust?
Now that I will admit that, we don't, we don't, you sign the petition, you fill out the form. It matches with the assessor's file. That's as far as we go. I don't know that we have, we don't go any further than that. Because they've signed the petition and, they've agreed that everything is, so yeah.
It's probably a good idea to, to have some evidence of what the legal authority is to sign. Because, in all of these cases, and I'll just tell you, there was an engineer one time that back in the day that was going through where I lived and was getting a lot of properties rezoned. And one day they asked, is anybody here to speak in opposition? And the property owner stood up and said, yeah, I'm opposed. And what he would do is he would get the properties rezoned, and then he would, after he got it rezoned, he'd go and try to negotiate a contract with the property owner. So they started requiring evidence of legal authority.
Yeah, I mean, we just,
Yeah,
I mean, we just,
just a thought.
as
going
a
forward.
rule, and I don't know the past, but I just don't think that that's probably ever been.
I know.
Signature in the petition has been what we've
I get it.
accepted.
I understand.
As
It's
it
just that
becomes-
since it's been brought up, it was a good question.
Oh, perhaps the applicant can clarify some of that for us.
So I would
Or
direct.
provide an affidavit, an
Sure,
actual
sure.
notarized affidavit.
Sure, I mean,
Effect.
you
Better
guys
some
are,
kind of document.
you got three attorneys on this board, so I'm,
So if we can move on, we'll ask the applicant of that and
that'd be the right way to.
finish
go
up
about
with what you're,
Yeah, I think I'm finished. I think the concern is, I think obviously the city wishes to grow. It's just, is this, it's difficult without a site plan or without a plan to envision what this is going to look like with the lack of infrastructure and adjoining uses that exist. And so.
well, and I'd still like to go back to E on your staff report to explore that a little bit because it draws a lot of concern for me.
But I would just invite you, I think, since I think I'm done, I can get back up to let the applicant
yeah.
make their case and, and any other person that wants to talk, and then you can ask a bunch of questions, I'm sure, so. If that works, I can just come right back up.
Yeah, I guess it would. I can ask them a little bit, but when we look at E talking about zero setbacks and County Shed Road and.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got at that. I think the concern which I was trying to voice is the T4 district requires, just as we were talking about the last project, it requires 60% of the road to have a building within, the 0 to 15 feet of the road. And so that road is categorized as a local road right now by the county. It's not slated for any improvements, right? And so there's a lot of traffic that's going to be obviously placed on it. Does that road need to be reclassified to a collector or connector, minor arterial in the future? Then you're putting buildings on that. And it also has a large curve in the road that's on this property. And so, that's usually not consistent with an urban core, with an urban transect, right? If you look at the urban transects, you start with the T1 and you go to the T2, T3, T4, it has that urban, you create the urban form. Well, the urban form doesn't exist. It's a T1 to T3 urban form right here. So to create a transect that's very urban at this location is going to require a lot of infrastructure improvements and improvements in the adjoining area that are not being proposed or you can't even ask for essentially right now. And so that's the concern, right?
So
Is that
County Shed Road is under the jurisdiction of the county
of the county. Yeah.
and,
Local road.
yeah.
But it is listed as, so we had the traffic engineer or for the county was in the TRC, and that was something that they stated that if this was to get approved, they might have to relook at this road in the future. But that wouldn't be until probably, obviously the developer would have to be on the hook for whatever development impacts, but it's likely that just with this project, they're not going to trigger a lot, but the road is a local road right now, so it's not really supposed to be handling a lot of traffic.
I know that road very well. I take it to go to Burton Wells to work out at the gym, and I've been down this road any number of times on my bike. But yeah, it's a sharp curve.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's this is just a staff level.
That's just
opinion.
what I wanted.
If you look at the T1, the T4, T5 transect that is in any form-based code, you see the density that's supposed to exist before you get to a T4 or T5. That doesn't exist here, nor does the future land use plan call for that. It's close, it's calling for it close by on 21, but not here. And I think I just have some concerns with the way the lot is bifurcated by the street. It doesn't have frontage on 21. If it had frontage on 21, that might be a different story. How will this develop in an urban fashion fitting to a T4 district? I can't rationally tell you or recommend that it would work very well, right? Based on our
The
plan.
application itself says that they want to discuss, fronting the buildings on the trail instead of the highway.
Yeah, and I think you can ask them. I know that's a concern. I think that would make sense if you are going to approve this. That's probably what we were.
Yeah,
gonna work out.
let's go on and let the
Let's let them-
applicant come forward. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Kurt. If you'll state your name and address for the record, I appreciate it.
Sure. Victor Apat, 537 St. Andrews Boulevard, Charleston, South Carolina.
How do you spell your last name?
APAT, like a pat on the back. It's 4 simple letters that nobody seems to figure out.
And what's your relationship to this property? I mean, I don't see your name on any of the paperwork.
Sure. Let me answer some of your questions directly. So first of all, it's no different, and I guess there are 3 attorneys on the board. It's no different than an attorney representing a client. And so I'm a 50% owner of EDP Holdings. Miss Ashley Dane is sitting here at the rear. She's my business partner. We are developers. We're in the process of purchasing the property. Again, the trust that you reference is in fact the current owner. We can certainly provide to you the sales contract in confidence if that's necessary to show you our authority. Again, that's their signature. Again, I would ask assuming it gets approved as a contingency of approval, if that's a concern, we can certainly get the affidavit necessary to prove the authority of the person who signed the document. But again, we went to the planning department, asked for the forms, and it's our experience throughout the Southeast. It's pretty standard that we represent a seller until we purchase the property. And we typically don't purchase the property until we understand that we can develop what we're considering that property for. No difference here. And again, happy to provide whatever documentation or backup would be helpful for you in that regard. I would add a couple additional pieces of information. So first of all, as we know, we can already build 80 units on this property if we stay in the county. We are here before you at the behest of the county, because the county has an agreement with the city that if we're adjacent to the city property, they want us to go attempt to annex into the city. So hence, that's why we're here. We also see the density. We'd like to have the increased density as well, but I would make the comment to you that we are not building 4-story buildings. We're not trying to build a high density community. It is a single-family residential community. It is not something that we believe is going to have a major impact to the road. We also know that just from prior experience that on the curve, those trees, just through natural development, will get thinned out. So the view corridor from cars and traveling, bicycle riders, those type of things will be cleaned up through that process. We'll certainly work with the city as far as our entrances to make sure we appropriately address any of the safety concerns in the curve. And then I would address the transect aspect. So we are a believer that with the hotels, which are in essence the T5 zoning, where it now steps down to T4, it's the natural progression of development. So what happens to our west, we don't know what will happen, but by annexing this piece of property, it begins to give you the addition of our property into your comprehensive use plan and begins to create a guideline into the future for the development of County Shed Road as further developers, perhaps the Trasks, come to develop their property. So it really is a natural progression. We think it's appropriate for this site. We did also meet with the Planning Commission, and the T4 zoning is what was recommended to us at that moment in time. So that's why we present that to you. And again, we believe it's appropriate for this particular site. I think that's it for the moment, unless you have any direct questions for me.
So the application that I have here in front of me says, one of the questions is, are there existing buildings on the site? And the application says no.
There's a house to be demolished.
Okay, so that's not right then,
That's my mistake. That's correct.
Okay. Because that's a cool house.
It is it's the seller's mother's house, and it's totally destroyed. If you go inside it, it's been with vagrants, people going into it, it's just totally destroyed.
But I'm just saying the architecture of it is really interesting. It's very different. It almost has kind of a modern look to it. I was just kind of curious as to whether or not you were aware of the fact that there was a house there on the property.
Yes, and I've walked every inch of the site personally, and the red bugs and chiggers that I have would attest to that.
Your application also says you'd like to request minor code variances which can be discussed through the annexation process. So when we allow somebody, when we approve an annexation, we don't, I know there's no site plan here, so I have no idea, you can talk as much as you want to about what you plan to do, but without a site plan in front of me, I'm going to give very little weight to what you are saying. And you in your application, you're already saying that you want minor code variances. In my experience, there are no minor code variances. But could you talk about what kind of code variances you want?
Well, I would mention a couple things. So the code requires a minimum of 13 feet finished floor elevation. It also requires a maximum of 3 feet of fill. So from our standpoint, our elevations are 8, 9s, and 10s. So we can get, again, depending upon where we're at, the 3 feet of fill component. Our initial and really the only request was to realistically be able to lower, there's a 2 foot above finished grade requirement where we're looking to try and reduce that down to a foot, something of that nature, just to reduce that finished floor elevation above finished grade. That's really about it.
Why do you want that?
Just because of the home designs that we're doing, nothing else.
Not the cost of the development?
No, the 1 foot really is a negligible impact cost-wise, just the look of the design for our architect. So that's really the only thing. We had talked about prior to submission other requests, but after we've kind of talked about it further, that's really the only one we've really settled in on. And it's not the end of the world either way, but that would have been the only request.
So how many single-family homes are you talking here?
We've only done one study on it, and it's realistically until we get the zoning and everything else, it's hard to answer that question for you because, as an example, as somebody mentioned a few minutes ago about wanting to front onto the greenway. Until you can get some of those things resolved, you don't know for sure whether you can do it, so you can't determine how many houses will go there.
So are these fee simple? Are you envisioning fee simple, single family attached homes? Is that the concept?
Yes, it's exactly what we're considering.
So why wouldn't you look for a lesser zoning than T4?
Well, we think
If you're
T4
not
is.
really going to.
Well, T4 is appropriate. It allows us the flexibility because as an example, by giving us the density requirements, it allows us to plan properly into the site depending upon what the frontage requirements are. And it also was what was recommended to us from the planning department.
Why would I ever approve this without seeing what you want to build?
We regularly annex property into the areas without giving a site plan. And the problem is until I know that I've got T4 zoning, I'm not going to spend the money on the engineering to try and come up with a site plan that actually fully complies with that until I understand it. Just traditionally the way we've developed over the years.
Well, I do understand a chicken and an egg kind of situation here, but I'm hesitant to approve an annexation for something that I can't visualize. And I am very familiar with that part of County Shed Road. That is a very steep, it is a very steep curve. It also comes downhill as well. So people come down there pretty fast. They come down that road really pretty fast because I don't know if you're familiar, as you come from the hotels down to where that house is,
Yeah.
it's downhill.
Sure.
It's great on my bike when I'm going that direction. It sucks when I'm coming back. But people will be flying down that road.
Sure. So a couple things. So I've sat in front of the house now on numerous occasions, and honestly, it comes across as a relatively limited use road. I'll see a car or two here or there. So we're not seeing tremendous traffic. And that's why we also think it works really nicely in the transect zoning because we get from the high use hotels, which all of those people for the most part are going the other direction. And then again, it comes down to a residential environment, and then it goes from there and can transect down to the T3, T2, and T1.
So what time of day have you spent there looking at the traffic?
I've been there at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. I've been there in the middle of the afternoon, and I've been there in early evening. So I've been to the site many times. As I said, the red bugs will attest to that. I would note that it'll take a little bit of, and I think I'm correct. I think it takes a couple readings for the annexation. Is that not correct? Or is it?
A reading, I think, would be before city council.
Yeah.
Reading would be before city council.
And usually we get a concept plan that gives us an idea of what you're intending to try and accomplish.
Okay. Again, typically not what we've done in the past, and we've not had any concerns with that, simply because what we recognize in that concept plan is that it has to go through planning further, and it has to go through building department review. All of those reviews elsewhere typically handle those type of reviews and approvals for us. That's what we've experienced in the past.
Another option is a development agreement with the city that would set forth the parameters of what the plan is that would be attached to an application for annexation. Otherwise, as Mr. Hallman said, we really are, buying a pig in a poke. We have no idea what would happen on the site. Anything that would go with the zoning approval is possible. And, my question about earlier about the 4-story, high density development, yes, visible from Trask Parkway. I mean, that's like the most dense scenario. No, you're telling me.
We're not doing that.
Well, that's what you're telling me now, but without a development agreement.
You can make that a contingency of the
No,
approval.
we can't.
No,
Well, we
We
can't.
cannot.
no.
We,
Ma'am, you need to give us a name and an address. You just can't do that.
I'm actually Dane. I'm also one of the owners of EDB Holdings. same 537 St. Andrews Boulevard as our office.
Can you speak up and into? the
Yes,
microphone?
and we did request the ability to do some form of annexation agreement or work with the city to understand that, because when we were coming in, we wanted to understand, can we front the greenway? Because some of the areas of the code were unclear. If we make a common area like a quad, can we have units face that so we can have open area? Some of these things were unclear, so we wanted to specify them as we annex. So we asked to be able to contact the city attorney to have an annexation agreement, which I believe would be similar to development agreement. And we were told that we cannot have an agreement until we go through the annexation process. So similar kind of chicken and the egg, we said the same thing. We're like, well, this code doesn't actually work perfectly. We'd like to be able to have green spaces. I met with TRC myself and went through it and said, like, can we face the wetlands? Because that might be pretty. There's a creek there. And we couldn't get any questions, so we were told until we annex, we can't have modifications to the zoning. So
Well,
we
well,
were
that's
saying
because
we
those
were
are what we call variances. And can't give you legal advice here.
Right,
But there is a concept of annexation agreement or development agreement with the city that if you were to agree to have that, basically it's an agreement to have a condition imposed on the annexation.
Okay.
That is an option for a proposed developer in a
Okay.
situation like this. And I urge you to consult your own attorney about that, but that is definitely an option. I don't know who told you it wasn't, but I believe that that is incorrect because you can agree to have a condition imposed and it would be in the form of a written document. And sometimes that is helpful in situations like this.
Can we let Kurt talk? Cause he's about to burst over there.
yes,
These emails are public record and I just want to make clear. So they did ask for a number of variances. Those included fronting along, basically have a traditional suburban pattern.
Mhm.
To front along so that would mean like garages in the front. So a traditional suburban, like a DR ordinance, right? They asked for maybe some variances from not fronting all the units on County Shed Road. To also front them, well, to consider the trail of frontage. I'm trying to think, there was some other things, the floodplain things. All of those were sent again, these public record via email to the city attorney. And can these variances be granted or accommodations? And we've said, no, if you're going to zone into or annex into something, you have to meet the standards of the zoning district that you're adopting. Now, we recommended an annexation agreement, but it can't violate the standards of the code itself when you're being annexed. So a variance still would have to go forward with the ZBOA if you're going to do that. But we can't lessen the code. But we can do an agreement that could maybe give you clarity or buttress or whatever, additional information. We just can't annex unless it was a PUD with lesser standards than what the code.
And I understand exactly. So you can't annex your way into a zoning variance.
Unless you do a PUD where you create your own district, you can do that,
And that is.
which was very common around here. So,
so maybe the development agreement is a PUD then, because if we were to annex and say we can't build 4 stories, isn't that the same thing you're annexing?
Well, no, I think that you're really in an area where you do need to consult your own attorney to get some advice on this. Because we can't give you the advice, but I think there is a confusion just from listening to you guys between what is a variance and what is a condition on annexation. And so I think, Kurt, I think tried to explain it a little bit, but, I think his main point was if you want to annex and have an agreement to basically give us an idea what conditions you'd be willing to work with, the whole plan has to meet the zoning as requested. Variances later on are like step 2. So your agreement cannot be conditioned on a future zoning change in the classification of the zoning that you're asking.
So does the development agreement or PUD, whichever direction our attorney would recommend we go, come back to this board or go?
The annexation if it's a matter of annexation, it could be attached and it would come before this board because we do,
Just trying to understand next.
yeah. But, if you're gonna do something with, the other option is the county, and then of course it would go,
It's the
From
same
them.
process, it's just we aren't really doing PUDs. So,
But are you doing development agreement?
we're not generally. And so that's something, but PUDs are kind of,
Right, but if
because
we're-
they were exploited, it's something you still have to agree on. Right? So I think we're saying this, but this is the only way you can do a lesser standard is to zone to a PUD. PUDs are not typically something that we're moving forward with just because of that very reason.
Right, so,
It's, catch 22.
right, so if we follow that logic, then really the PUD and development agreement is not an option available to us. That's what I just heard.
I think he said the PUD, which is a specialized type of development
sure.
agreement,
So,
not something the city, we're hearing from, this is the first time I've.
I
actually
mean,
heard
it's
this.
not something we really want to do, but an annexation agreement is different. It's just to do an annexation agreement, you have to follow the existing standards of the code. You can't do lesser.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You can do more, but you can't do lesser than.
Well, and basically what we'd be asking for here is, I mean, if you were to agree to do single family only on the parcel, that would be something that the code permits, but it isn't the maximum the code would permit in terms of density. So you could conceivably agree to something like that in an annexation agreement without running afoul of, needing a variance or something like that. But again, you need to,
It's allowed in
We
that
understand the
district.
legal side. I
Yeah,
understand
so,
we
and I
understand
think, and I'm sorry, I'm stepping in just because I'm trying to clear up some. So I think the reason they selected the T4 district and why this has gone forward is to do a townhouse. T3 doesn't allow you a single family attached, it only allows a house, right? And so that's part of the problem. Part of why I think they've asked for T4. So does that provide a little more clarity? But yes, if they restricted something that was allowed in that district, they could do that with the annexation agreement. We just can't give variances or carve out things that are not allowed in that district.
I think we clearly understand the variance piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
so, but it does sound like we can move forward with an annexation agreement. Is everybody in agreement with that? I understand no legal advice. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying from the city's perspective, is an annexation agreement a pathway that we can proceed with?
I'm not prepared to answer that question, yes or no, because that would be something that I think the city attorney or look to Kurt to answer the questions. I'm not going to answer that one at all.
I think, again, the challenge is that it has to be negotiated from both sides and you're still gonna have to take it forward and we haven't had that conversation.
yeah, we need to see we would see it after your agreement.
Of course.
And we can't make the agreement for you, tell you what to put into it, because it's up to you guys to decide what you would be willing to put in an agreement like that with advice of counsel and then the city to weigh in on that. And by then, that's not us. We weigh on the application.
Oh, and I understand that, but again, we're just trying to walk out of here with a pathway to get back to you. Where you have something that you're willing to review and that meets Kurt's requirements. And so as an example, we know PUDs are not going to be the pathway. As
I mean,
an example.
It's possible, you could do it, it's.
Right. I'm not, but we're not
Hasn't
trying
been,
we're not trying to
hasn't
take the
been.
uphill.
Right,
battle.
it's not-
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like for this evening, though, you may want to withdraw your application at this point or consider that and then explore some of these avenues.
Well, I think what they're asking for in their defense is, from reading your comments, is there's some concern about what this will look like before you feel comfortable recommending an annexation. And so that would be, I think, one thing that they would maybe add to an agreement that it would look like X. Is that, I think they just want to know what other things are you concerned about before they go down, if they go down there.
Well,
you wish to opine on them. I think we've,
I think you've outlined a lot of them, and we've already said a lot of them here, so I think they have a pretty clear understanding of what we're gonna want, what we would like to see in order to, consider an approval.
Okay, so the last question, relative to the withdrawal component, is there a scenario, we've run into some instances before, that if we don't withdraw, it's X number of months before you can apply again?
Well, that's why, do they have to withdraw, Kurt, or should we table it? I mean, what are the options procedurally at this point?
Withdraw it.
I mean, if you table it, we still need a meeting like that it comes back. I mean, it can't be tabled for indefinitely, right? It just requires a new application fee. I mean, we don't, it's again, annexations from the beginning of the are voluntary, so it's, there's not like a time limit. You can't apply, you could apply every month, right? So.
Yeah, and I think
turn
it's
down.
annexation first, rezoning second, so,
So yeah, they
I
could.
don't know
Back
that-
next.
I don't
month.
think I don't even know if we can table an annexation.
I think you can table pretty much anything. It's just that
Okay,
what you're saving them is redoing the application.
Well,
so.
and I guess, there are some other potential issues with the application that would at minimum maybe require supplementation as to the ownership situation. So that, either withdraw and reapply or supplement, I guess there's a fee. I don't know exactly what the fee was that was paid. Doesn't show on here.
Like $300, $500, something like that.
Kurt,
$300.
one question, am I wrong, but 2.8.4 is a provision for a planned unit development. I mean, they could.
Yeah, it's in the code. It's just.
Could apply as a piece.
It's just, we're not, I just said it's feasible, it's legal. It's just,
That's probably, here's the thing.
you have to do a
The
really,
gentleman
really
wants-
good job on
If
a
the gentleman,
PhD,
the
so.
gentleman wants to do what he thinks he wants to do, if these two people do. It seems like the PUD regulation is probably, the better way to go. Rather than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole,
Right.
because we got this funky code that says that in outlying areas, we gotta try to fit this urban design scheme, which doesn't necessarily make any sense. So, in any event, that might be the route.
It is in the
to go.
code. That's why we brought it up. It is a solution. It would require them to fully design the
I mean,
project
when
before-
I looked at this,
And they bring it back to you.
when I looked at this property, it struck me as to be more natural for development along the same lines that you see at the hotel development and so forth. And it's a natural place to kind of grow that stuff. As you go out further, all of a sudden you get to a car dealership. You look across the street, you got hotels. They've got a curb cut across an access that they did across the bike path. So they must have gotten agreement from the trail folks for that. Then the trail goes underneath that access, Paul pointed out to me. But if that's not what you want to do, if you want to propose a single family development, these people ought to be allowed to propose a single family development to us, but it sounds like there's a better way to do it than the way they're doing it. And I would probably either table or withdraw this application and come back after you've kind of thought this through a little bit. You don't have to do a full-scale development plan, you can just do a sketch plan.
Right.
As far as we're concerned, you can do it on, and draw it as long as it looks like something that shows us what you want to do, but take it to staff first and talk with Kurt about it. So he's not the final word, but he can tell you what our thinking is. And I
Yeah, I think
think you
that-
at least heard from the two of us that a PUD might be the way to do what you want to do, not saying that would ultimately be approved by the group, but it might be the regulation that satisfies your desire to do a development without a bunch of waivers, or excuse me, variances.
Hmm.
Because we don't have any authority over variances anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we hear you. It sounds like you want to either, sounds like maybe fully urban, like a commercial development that fully realized that maybe access is 21, or lesser density, or doing a PUD, or coming up, and then I think they've talked about all these things, but they're not moving it forward is what I'm hearing.
And I didn't realize until this gentleman said it, that the county actually tells people to get in touch with the city and encourages people when they're adjacent to the
Yeah, I
city.
thought it
to
was in their
actually-
code under the Northern Regional Plan, but it is a requirement.
Well, and I think that's a good thing, because I think, generally speaking, the city would want to grow in areas like this.
Well, and there's advantages to the future residents, of course, because they would have city services and all, they pay city taxes, but they also get all the city services, which are not available in unincorporated areas. So there's a lot of reasons for it, but procedurally, if we were to table this today at the request of the applicant, to allow the applicant to take some time to meet more with the city, consult an attorney, supplement their application, whatever they want to do, could we do that?
I mean, you could, but I think it just would be easier for everybody just to withdraw it.
Yeah.
I would rather let the applicant make
Or
a
let the-
decision on what they would like to
You're
do.
basically saying you're not going to recommend it, and so I think you just need to make a motion, and what it is, they'll.
Well, before we go there, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you guys talk about it for a second? Let me ask if there's any public comment related to this at all.
And I would just be, so we don't have.
Could you
anything else.
say again,
Well,
into the
talk into the
microphone?
mic.
Yeah.
There you
My
go.
name's Janet Regner and I live at 283 Deer Lane on Fripp Island. And I'm just here to observe and I definitely think a traffic study, especially if they're asking for T4 or it sounds like T3 could be the lesser density, that a in my experience, a traffic study is usually required because it's getting so crowded already. And if you're going to zone it T4 without any idea what they're actually going to build or any restrictions on what they can build, then the traffic could really become a problem and make, Beaufort not what it is today. And I don't feel comfortable really with my past experience, letting an LLC representative make any decisions regarding land, because I don't think an affidavit, without the person, the ownership person here they need to be here representing what's going to happen to their land and see if there's any other restrictions that are on the land that could be overshadowed by changing the zoning as it is right now. So.
Thank you,
that's it. Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Are there any other comments?
I live at 163.
Name and.
Name and address.
My name is Kitty Catterad. I live at 163 County Shore Road. And I just recently learned about this, and it wasn't advertised correctly for the locals in my area to be notified and find out more about it, because when I called, I was told that the meeting was on the 16th and it would probably be around 5 o'clock. I was never told if it was in the city or to the county, because I went to the county first before I come over here today. Also, there is a lot of traffic on that road. And we also have a lot of accidents on that road. And we also have a lot of high speed traces on that road. Now, there's already been one accident recently on that road at that curve where somebody had gotten killed. And also, excuse me, when you come around that sharp curve, there's a dip where the road is washing out. So, and there is wetland there, and there is part of that property is on one side of the road of the 14 acres, and part of it is on the other side of the road. So what are they developing? They're developing on this side of the road? How many acres? Are they gonna build whatever it is gonna be, because they don't even know themselves? And then on top of that, the water, you have the marsh on this side and the marsh on this side. And then you have the waterway back further up. So actually, that water sometimes floods the road during hurricane season and high, what do you call it?
Surge.
Surge, yes, thank you. And also a lot of rain. So it'll flood on County Shed Road as well. And a lot of people, a lot of it is to where the people in that area basically want single-family homes to where it stays like basically it is, not bringing in commercial in that area. And I know a lot of people have not been notified in my area to be able to come to this meeting. And I think that should be something that should be, done.
Ma'am, can I ask you, I'm not familiar
Mhm.
with your address, but do you live in the city or in the county?
I live in the county. That's the county road there.
Okay.
That's
And how
Highway
did you-
73.
How did you find out about it?
Well, what I had to do, I had passed that way several times because I go from my address, I live, the stop sign's here, I live 9/10 of a mile down this way, okay?
You'd like?
But did you hear about it or how did you find out?
I kept driving by and I seen something white and on this side of the road. And as I was, and then I kept driving by and then I started seeing something on this side of the road. So finally, because I couldn't stop and read it because there's so much traffic on that road, because somebody will end up running into you. And,
Looking at this
so
map,
I
do you,
pulled in
Okay.
on this side of the road, which is point to 21. And I had to get out of the car and go over there and read what was on the thing. And I called on the phone and I asked them about when was this, and because it said it was the 16th and approximately what time?
Kurt, could you put the
I
mic?
was just trying to find, what's your address again, so we can
I'm at
just,
163.
okay,
Yeah,
so
I
you're
found it.
down, you're down.
It's
here.
further down the road.
Okay, so, let's see, so this is
It's
one,
like Ramsey Road. Is it the Smith residence? was on this side,
39,
and
one,
Smith
there we
on this
go.
side.
So she is right here. So the statutory requirement is 300 feet. So she wouldn't have received a notice, but she did see the sign.
Okay, so,
Let's put in the paper. and-
ma'am, if you could let her be by the microphone, Kurt, so we can hear her.
Sure.
Okay,
A lot of people do not read get the newspaper. And a lot of people in that area or older people, older generation, like the property that they're talking about on this side. Okay, you're coming down to around the corner, all right, you have the hotels here. And then from there, you gotta go down a dip. And then, because the water runs down there, and then you got open wetland here. Then you have a house that's right there. Then you got high power lines here. Then you got an old lady that has property here. And then you have, it used to be Green Acres Trailer Park on the other side of the old lady. And then the river. And then my daughter bought from the river down about 2 acres. And then all that back up in there is wetland. Well, the property floods in the roadway. I mean, we've had One year, we had to pull out a lady with a child, pull her car out of the water because she was driving through it because it flooded. So, I mean,
Okay, I think we understand where you,
you
what
know,
you're trying to get at. And,
and there's a lot of traffic,
we appreciate it.
right?
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Do we have anything online?
No virtual comments, sir.
Okay, would the applicant like to,
Yeah, the applicant has made the decision to withdraw the application.
okay,
Appreciate the comments from everybody tonight, and we'll work with Kurt and his staff and come back with you sometime in the near future and see what we can.
thank
work
you
out
so
together.
much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you so
We
much.
think you're trying to do the right thing, so.
Yeah, yeah, no, no
let's
worries
go.
whatsoever. I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you guys staying late tonight.
Thank you.
Very much.
So now we're going to move to item B, the Beaufort Development Code changes.
I think this is, up, do you want to do them, do you want to continue them tonight or, because last 3 or 4 sessions?
Well, I think we could just state where we are
Oh, sure.
at this point. I think we decided to do a select committee to review chapter 7 and chapter 9, bring it back to the commission in our next
Work session?
work session. I think we're kind of on track for that. I've been working with Benji on that. Bill Bardenwalper has agreed to take a look over what we're producing, but I think I'd like to see if we couldn't get together with you, Kurt, next week and just kind of run through where we are and what we're trying to do.
I'm open except for Tuesday and Wednesday mornings because we do our
Okay.
TRCs and
And our
which
next,
is Tuesday is not good in general, so.
when is our next work session?
Early October, first Tuesday. in
First
October.
Tuesday of October.
First Tuesday.
Which, should be on your schedule.
Yep, it's on my calendar.
So yeah, just shoot me over a day and time and we'll set something up.
Yeah, other than that, I
I
don't
know
think,
if you-
I don't have anything else to share. I've done a lot of comments and on what the direction is that we think would be good. But we'll wait and see how the commission responds to our draft.
We could, kind of, I know annexation requirements are really statutory in South Carolina, so we could maybe have a deeper discussion at that work session about them because they're, it seems like you're going a route where you kind of really want a sketch plan to be submitted with an annexation, but I don't think we can do that, but we can at least have a broader discussion of what can we do, what can we.
That would be great if you
And it's a
looked
chicken
into
and
that.
egg thing. They don't have to submit it, so they're not going to submit it. But if they have to submit it, then it runs afoul of the state statute. So unless you do an agreement, and so that's,
Okay, outside of the agenda, I did have a couple of things I'd like to bring up if I could.
Sure.
With permission of the commission. I know that on the schedule, we had put tree ordinance kind of at the end of everything. But I'm getting a sense there's a whole lot of excitement about moving that tree ordinance forward a little bit. Can you tell me where we might be with that? I think we were gonna go through all of the code sections before we.
yeah, if you look at your packet, it has the schedule, actually trees and landscaping were next. So we were going to do that, and trees and landscaping were proposed for a November and December work session, and then a January formal hearing before you. I will tell you that we've been meeting with concerned parties. And we've been kind of revising what I had sent to the code edit session even more than, so we'll have a better draft to provide to you when we get to that, so.
Okay. That was it. I might talk to you when we get done. Anything else from the commission? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I didn't need to take it.